There are places on American highways that never make it to the maps. Places where headlights flicker, footsteps echo in snow that shouldn't hold them, and things walk just beyond the reach of your mirrors. Tonight, you'll hear true stories from drivers who never believed in the strange until the road proved them wrong. So turn the lights down, keep your eyes on the shoulder, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, because out here, you're not just a viewer, you're part of the Creepy Souls family now. I drive long-haul routes through Appalachia, places where the GPS signal fades and the only light is your own headlights bouncing off wet pavement. Most nights, it's just the hum of the engine, the rhythm of the road, and the occasional deer darting out like a ghost in the fog. I've been doing this nearly 15 years, so you learn to tune out the paranoia. But that night, something was wrong. It was late October, the kind of cold where your breath fogs the cab windows if you cut the heat for even a minute. I was headed eastbound on a route that cuts through a rural stretch outside McDowell County, West Virginia. Locals call it Devil's Spine, a thin, winding highway flanked by forests so dense you feel like you're driving through a tunnel. No streetlights, no rest stops, just asphalt and shadows. Around 1:30 a.m. I noticed headlights appear behind me. No big deal. Another driver, maybe someone who took the same shortcut. I kept my pace, but something started to bug me. That car, or whatever it was, kept the exact same distance, no closer, no farther, just back there, hovering. At first I figured it was coincidence, but 5 minutes passed, then 10, still the same. I tapped my brakes lightly, not hard, just enough to see if they'd react. They didn't. No slowing down, no speeding up. I tried to get a better look through my side mirror, but the light from their high beams made it useless. I couldn't even make out the shape of the car, just two blinding white orbs. And then I realized something that made my chest tighten. I hadn't seen anyone else on this road for nearly an hour. No trucks, no roadside homes, no mile markers even, just me, and those damn lights. I turned down my radio. Every sound seemed louder. The rattle of my glove compartment, the subtle whine of the turbo, the wind tapping at the window seals. I told myself maybe they were just tailgating. Maybe they were scared to pass on such a narrow road. But I had stretches where the road widened just enough to let someone get around. Still, they never did. Eventually, I pulled off to the right. It was one of those gravel shoulder spots, barely big enough for a compact car to squeeze into. I flicked my hazards and waved them past. Except, nothing passed. The lights never moved, and within 3 seconds they were just gone. No engine, no headlights, no brake lights. Just total darkness behind me. And I mean total. The kind of darkness where you can't even see the trees anymore. Just black. I sat there, heart pounding, hands still gripping the wheel like I was in a crash. I leaned forward, trying to squint through the side mirror. Nothing. I even turned off my own headlights, just to see if their glow might still be there. All I got was cold blackness and the sound of gravel popping under my tires. Then I did something stupid. I opened my door and stepped out. The air hit me like ice. The kind of cold that crawls inside your ears and stings your fingertips. I took a few cautious steps toward the rear of my truck, eyes scanning the road, the woods, everything. But it was like I was the last person on Earth. I even knelt and touched the ground behind my trailer, not a single fresh tread mark. Nothing disturbed the gravel, it was dry, undisturbed. And yet, I saw those lights. I felt them following me. I got back in the truck and locked both doors. Drove another 20 minutes trying to calm myself. No music, no podcasts, just the road, the wind, and my breathing. I made it to a rest stop somewhere past Welch and parked, under one of those dim yellow lamps. There were 2 other trucks there, diesel engines humming low, safety in numbers. But I couldn't sleep, not because of what I saw, or didn't see, but because of what happened when I checked my dash cam. Footage. I always keep it running. Just habit. I scrubbed through the last hour. It showed the road, the curves, even the wildlife darting across the road at one point. But the entire time I thought those headlights were behind me, there was nothing in the footage, not even a glimmer. No lights, no vehicle, no one, just me, talking to myself, looking back nervously in the mirror, at nothing. And then, at timestamp 1:47:03, something flickered on the passenger side window. Just for a second. A face, but it wasn't lit up by headlights. It was inside the cab, right behind me. I stared at that frame for a long time. 47:03. The still image showed my face turned halfway toward the side mirror, but right behind my head, just over my shoulder, was a face. Pale, expressionless. The eyes, they were too wide. No reflection in them, no glint of light. Just solid voids. And the mouth wasn't open in a scream or even a grin. It was flat. Like it didn't need to make noise, like it wasn't supposed to be seen, but I saw it. And when I paused the footage, zoomed in, enhanced what I could, the skin looked wrong. Not decayed, just unreal. Like wax that had been left out in the cold too long. My first instinct was to jump out of the truck. I checked the sleeper compartment, the floor, under the seats. Nothing. I even popped the door open and checked underneath the cab with a flashlight. Empty. Still, I drove the rest of that route with all the lights on inside. Kept checking the rear view every few seconds. Never saw the face again. Not in the truck. Not in the footage, but I felt it. That sense you get when you're not alone, when the hairs on your neck rise and you don't know why. It followed me all the way to Charleston. I kept the cab lights on even when I slept. Weeks passed. I didn't tell anyone. Not my dispatcher, not the guys at the truck stop, not even my brother, who also hauls. How do you explain something like that? Hey man, ever been followed by headlights that don't exist and then find a ghost in your cab? They'd laugh. Or worse, they'd believe me. And then I got curious. Started poking around forums, long-haul driver boards, paranormal threads, even a few Reddit posts from people who'd driven the same stretch near McDowell. Turns out, I'm not the only one. One guy mentioned a phantom tail that mimics other cars but never passes. Another described a dreamlike state, driving for hours only to realize they never moved. But one post stuck with me. If you see the lights but never the car, don't stop. It's not trying to pass, it's trying to get in. That line made me sick, because I did stop. And whatever it was, it did get in. I started driving different routes, avoided West Virginia altogether. I told dispatch I was sick of the hills, needed better terrain for my brakes. They bought it, but about 3 months later, I took a late-night route through Tennessee. Near the border with Kentucky, same kind of terrain, same silence. And at 2:11 a.m., the headlights came back. Same distance, same height, same slow, steady follow. I felt cold immediately, even though the heater was blasting. This time, I didn't pull over. I pushed 75 through winding turns, hoping it'd vanish, but it stayed locked behind me like it was tethered. I reached for my radio to call it in, to say something to someone, but before I could, my dash cam started flickering. The feed cut in and out, and then my radio crackled. Not music, not static. A voice, faint, too low to make out, like someone whispering across a long hallway. I shut it off, drove like hell until sunrise. When I finally pulled into a diner off I-26, I checked the footage again, and there it was. 1:47:03, a new date, a new face. Only this time, it was sitting in the passenger seat, facing me, closer, looking directly at the camera. Its mouth was open now, and for the first time, I noticed something else. Every time the face appears, it's a little closer to the front. One day, I think it'll be in the driver's seat, and I don't know what happens after that, but I'm not waiting to find out. I don't drive nights anymore, not alone, and I cover every mirror in the cab. Because sometimes when I glance into one, even for a split second, I don't see my own reflection. I see them, and they're always smiling, like they're finally getting comfortable, like they're getting ready to drive. You drive enough years through the Blue Ridge Mountains and you start seeing weird stuff. A pair of glowing eyes off the shoulder, a barefoot hitchhiker at 3 a.m., lights in the trees that vanish when you blink. Most of it you can brush off as wildlife or sleep deprivation, or just mountain life being mountain life. But what happened last October off Route 226A, that still crawls into my head every time fog rolls over the road. It was a Friday night, cold enough for your breath to fog the windshield, but not quite freezing yet. I was heading back to Marion from Spruce Pine after helping my cousin with a busted septic line. We'd had a few beers after, just enough to unwind, but not enough to make me second-guess getting behind the wheel. That stretch of 226A is narrow, with hairpin turns and steep drop-offs where the shoulder disappears. Trees hunch over the road like they're listening in. It's beautiful in the daytime, but at night, especially with thick fog like that night, it feels like you're driving through a tunnel of ghosts. I had the windows cracked slightly, just enough to smell the pine and let the cold keep me sharp. Music was off. Headlights on low beam because high beam just bounces off fog and blinds you. I was doing maybe 30 miles, crawling through the turns. That's when I saw it. A sedan. Silver or gray, hard to tell through the haze. It was pulled halfway into the ditch on the right side, angled like it had skidded or swerved suddenly. Driver's side door wide open, headlights dim but still on, engine clicking like it had just shut off. I slowed immediately and pulled to the opposite side, tires crunching wet gravel. I kept my truck idling and grabbed my flashlight. Thought maybe someone hit a deer or slid off trying to avoid something. The whole scene looked fresh. No busted glass, no airbag deployed. Just off. Hello? I called out, stepping closer. No answer. I peeked inside. Empty. No purse, no phone, no blood, no sign of a struggle. Just the smell of engine heat and wet fabric. I swept the light around the woods on both sides, half expecting someone to come. Stumbling out, maybe shaken up, maybe drunk. Nothing. I walked a few paces up the road. No footprints. Just damp pavement and leaves sticking to it like skin. The hairs on my arms stood up. Something wasn't right. I walked back to the truck and called it in. Told dispatch I found what looked like an abandoned vehicle near mile marker 44 on 226A. They asked if anyone was inside. I told them no. They said they'd notify the local sheriff's office and asked me to stay put until someone arrived. So I did. I sat there in my truck, watching the fog swirl around my high beams like smoke. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and then I looked back. Across the road, and the car was gone. Just gone. No taillights, no engine sound, no movement. The ditch was empty. The road was clean. Not a trace of it ever being there. At first I thought maybe I was turned around. Maybe the fog played tricks on me. I jumped out, flashlight sweeping across the area again. Nothing. No tire ruts in the ditch, no broken branches, no heat shimmer in the air. The spot where the car had been was undisturbed, like it had never existed. I walked further up the road, then back down, checked both sides. Nothing. I even called back dispatch, embarrassed, and told them the car wasn't there anymore. They said an officer was still en route and asked if I wanted to wait or clear out. I wanted to leave. Every inch of me screamed it. But part of me, maybe the part that still believed I was being rational, stayed. 15 more minutes passed. That's when I saw headlights behind me. Not a cruiser. Same height, same color, same intensity as the car I'd seen earlier, and they weren't moving. Just parked behind me on the road, maybe 20 yards back, hazy through the fog. I rolled down my window and stuck my head out. "Hey, you okay?" I shouted. No answer. I flipped on my reverse lights, thinking maybe they needed help. But the second I did, the lights blinked out, and when I stepped out of my truck again, there was nothing there. The road behind me was empty. No engine sound. No glow, no brake lights, but when I got back in and shut the door, something clicked on my rear passenger side lock. Just once. Click. And I swear to God, I didn't touch anything. I froze. That soft click from the back seat didn't sound mechanical. It wasn't a door settling or the seatbelt locking back into place. It sounded intentional, like someone, or something, was back there. I turned my head slowly toward the rearview mirror, but the fog outside made it impossible to see anything clearly, just shadows moving in the mist and my own breath fogging up the glass. Then the cabin got colder. No draft, no open windows. Just a sudden, unnatural drop in temperature, enough to sting my knuckles where I'd gripped the steering wheel tight. Didn't want to look behind me. I knew I had to, but everything in me screamed not to. That if I turned around too fast, I'd see a face inches from mine. Or worse, nothing at all. I took a breath and flipped on the dome light. The back seat was empty, or so it seemed. There was something strange, though. The rear passenger door. It was unlatched, just slightly ajar. Not open enough to set off the door light, but just enough that you'd miss it unless you were really looking. I reached back and slammed it shut. Then I turned the ignition. I was done waiting for the sheriff, peeled off down that mountain pass, tires slipping a little on the damp curves. The fog seemed thicker now, clinging to the windshield no matter how high I cranked the defrost. I didn't stop until I hit a gas station on the outskirts of Marion, one of those old two-pump places with flickering bulbs and a guy inside who looked like he'd been there since the Nixon administration. I parked under the light, got out, and walked a full lap around the truck. Nothing. No scratches, no smudges. No sign that anything and/or anyone had been near it. But when I climbed back into the cab, I noticed something that stopped my heart cold. There, sitting on the center console between the driver's seat and the passenger's, was a key. Just one old-style, metal, worn smooth, no keychain, no tag, and it wasn't mine. I keep my truck keys clipped to my belt. I don't carry spares. No one had been in that vehicle with me, and yet, there it was. Just lying there, as if someone had left it for me or dropped it when they left. I haven't driven 226A since that night, and I never found out if the sheriff ever responded to the call, or if anyone else reported seeing that wrecked sedan. But I kept the key. Not because I want it, because I'm scared of what happens if I throw it away. Some nights I wake up and swear I hear the sound of an engine idling outside. No headlights. No movement, just the low tick-tick-tick of something waiting. And when I look out the window, nothing there. But every time I go back to sleep, I dream of that car. Driver's side door wide open, fog rolling through the trees, and a figure sitting, silently in the back seat holding out a key, like it's my turn to take the wheel forever. I've always been the kind of guy who'll pull over if someone looks like they need help, especially out on the back roads where it might be an hour before another car comes along. Maybe it's the way I was raised, or maybe it's because I've broken down more times than I can count and always prayed someone decent would stop. Either way, that night on Route 74, just outside Murphy, North Carolina, I thought I was doing the right thing. It had been raining steady since about 8 p.m. One of those cold, Appalachian spring storms that soaks through your jacket and makes the air smell like wet pine and asphalt. I was headed back to Asheville after visiting my buddy Jared for the weekend. The drive usually takes about 2 hours, winding through forested hills with barely any shoulder and even fewer streetlights. Around 10:15, I was passing mile marker 1 and 13 when I saw someone standing just beneath the green reflective sign. Man, maybe mid-30s or 40s, wearing what looked like a dark coat or maybe a hoodie. The rain was coming down hard, and the way the headlights hit the water made everything shimmer, like I was looking through warped glass. He wasn't waving or anything, just standing there, still as a post. But I could tell from the way he was, hunched, arms tight against his sides, that he was freezing, probably stranded. I slowed and pulled off as far as I could without sliding into the ditch, rolled down the passenger window and leaned over. "You need a lift somewhere?" I called out. He didn't answer, didn't even nod, just walked slowly, toward the passenger door like he already knew I'd ask. I leaned across and popped it open. He climbed in, soaking wet, not saying a word. His boots squelched against the floor mat. He didn't even close the door hard and just gave it a soft pull like he didn't want to disturb anything. I figured he was shaken or embarrassed. I didn't push it. "Where you headed?" I asked. Easing the truck back onto the road, still nothing, he just sat there looking straight ahead. Not at me, not at the dashboard, just forward. I glanced over once or twice, trying not to be obvious. His face was pale, lips a little bluish from the cold, beard patchy, like he hadn't shaved in weeks. The smell coming off his coat was something between wet wool and earth, like he'd been out in the woods for a while. We rode like that for a few miles. No music, just the wipers squeaking and the tires hissing on wet pavement. After a few bends in the road, I started to feel it. That itch in the back of your brain when something isn't right. I glanced over again. The seat was empty. No puddle. On the floorboard. No wet imprint. Just my jacket lying there, folded like I'd tossed it aside. I almost ran off the road. I slammed the brakes, heart hammering, staring at the empty seat, then out the side window. Nothing. No one walking behind. Us. No one in the woods, no door ajar. I hadn't even heard it open. The only sound was the rain hammering the roof and the rhythmic thunk-thunk of the hazard lights I'd just flipped on without realizing it. I sat there for maybe a full minute before I killed the hazards and started driving again. Slower now. More cautious. Trying to replay the moment in my head, to make it make sense. Maybe I never picked anyone up. Maybe the fog and the headlights played tricks on me. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, the back seat wasn't empty. There was a smudge on the passenger side window, like a handprint. Only too long. Too thin. Fingers that didn't match the proportions of anything human. And in the mirror, for just a second, I saw something sitting behind me. Not leaning forward, not breathing heavy. Just there, staring into the back of my head, like it had been watching the whole time. And then, like fog fading in the sun, it was gone. Just me, the road, and a growing sense that I had brought something into my truck. Something that never meant to leave. I didn't go straight home that night, I couldn't. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, I expected to see something. Someone. Sitting in the back seat again. And even though the road behind me stayed empty, I kept catching movement in the glass. A flicker. A shape. Just enough to make me doubt myself. I stopped at a 24-hour gas station off the highway, the kind with buzzing fluorescent lights and stale coffee. I parked under the brightest pump, stepped out and left the truck running. I must have looked insane, circling my vehicle in the rain with a flashlight, checking every door, every panel, even under the chassis like something might be clinging to the undercarriage. Of course, there was nothing. But when I opened the passenger door again, the seat was wet. Not like I'd left the window open. I hadn't. Not like spilled water. There was no bottle, no cup. It was soaked, just the seat, like someone had been sitting there. For a long time, I used a towel from the back to dry it off, trying not to freak out. My hands were shaking. I told myself it had to be condensation. Maybe the guy had been there. Maybe I just blacked out part of the drive. That's better than thinking the alternative, that something got in that never got out. I finally made it home a little after midnight, left the truck parked on the curb and didn't even bother unloading. Just locked the doors and bolted inside. Took a hot shower, poured a glass of whiskey, and sat on the edge of my bed, staring out the window. The rain had slowed to a mist. Street lamps cast long shadows over the wet pavement. Everything looked calm, normal, until I saw it. A man. Standing, under the street sign at the corner, soaking wet, still as a statue. Same silhouette, same posture. He wasn't facing the road this time. He was facing my house. I blinked. He was gone. Vanished. Like a glitch in the dark. I ran out there with a flashlight and didn't find a trace. No footprints in the wet grass. No trail in the mud. Just empty silence and the distant hum of power lines. I haven't seen him since. But sometimes when I'm driving alone at night, especially through the mountains, I feel it again. That weight in the passenger seat. That cold presence pressing against the windows. I never pick up hitchhikers anymore. Because now I know something most people don't. Not everyone you see on the side of the road is trying to get somewhere. Some are trying to come back, and once you let them in, they never really leave. I've driven long-haul routes out of Tennessee for over 17 years now. If you've ever pulled solo night shifts through the Smokies or down past Asheville in fog so thick it eats your high beams, then you know the kind of quiet I'm talking about. The kind that isn't peaceful. The kind that feels empty. That night started out normal. I was hauling refrigerated goods east on I-40, headed toward Wilmington. Middle of January. Cold enough to see your breath inside the cab, if you didn't run the heat. I'd pulled out of Knoxville just after 9 p.m., thermos full of coffee. Country station tuned low. CB radio humming just in case someone flagged weather up ahead. There's a rhythm to night runs. You learn to trust the darkness, the lights of the truck ahead of you, the sound of tires on wet asphalt. But around midnight, somewhere past mile marker 407, I heard it. A soft crackle on channel 19. At first, I thought it was just interference and some rookie not holding the mic down long enough, but then I heard a whisper. Real faint, like it was leaking through a bad connection. Derek. It was my name. Said slow, clear, but quiet. Now here's the thing. I never use my real name on the CB. Been a habit since my first year on the road. Everyone calls me Rust Bucket on there. Kind of a joke from when I drove an old Peterbilt with primer spots and a bumper hanging on by duct tape. No one out there should have known my name. I picked up the mic. Breaker 19, you got a handle? No. Response just static. I switched over to channel 14, a backup a lot of the older guys use. Nothing. Back to 19. That's when it came through again. Derek. Stop. Not a warning tone. More like pleading. It didn't sound like a trucker, more like a woman, maybe mid-30s. Soft, raspy voice. Now I've heard plenty of weird chatter over the CB. Kids with radio toys. Weirdos testing scanners, but no one calls you by name. I checked my phone. No messages, no notifications. Nothing weird running in the background. The voice came through again. Please. Derek. Stop the truck. I gripped the wheel tighter. My exit wasn't for another 30 miles, and there wasn't another rig in sight. That stretch of road is lined with thick woods on both sides. No towns for miles. And I hadn't seen another vehicle behind me in at least 15 minutes. I flipped, off the radio. Silence. 10 miles later, I started to breathe easier. Figured it had to be a prank. Maybe one of the warehouse guys back in Knoxville messing around. I reached for my coffee. That's when the CB flipped back on by itself. Just static. At first then, you're not listening, Derek. I swerved so hard I nearly hit the rumble strip. My hand wasn't even near the radio. The voice this time was different. Deeper, male, but distorted, like it was underwater or coming through a long metal pipe. I pulled into the next rest area, a rundown pull-off with cracked pavement and a single broken vending machine, and slammed the rig into park. I shut everything off. Truck, radio, phone. Even pulled the fuse from the CB just to be sure. I climbed out into the cold, night air and stood there for a bit, breathing hard. Fog was rolling low across the asphalt like spilled milk. No other trucks. No lights. Just mine. That's when I noticed something. The CB speaker in the cab. It was still on. Faint static hissed through it, even though the unit had no power. And beneath the static, I swear I heard breathing. Slow, shaky, right before the voice said again, "Please, stop the truck before they see you." I turned and looked toward the tree line. That's when I saw something move. Not an animal. Not a person. Tall, thin, wrong. Just standing at the edge of the woods. Still, watching me. I didn't move. I couldn't. That thing at the tree line. It wasn't shaped right. Its limbs were too long, joints bent like they didn't have bones. It wasn't walking. It was sliding, real slow, just past the fog line. The CB inside my cab kept hissing. Then, "Derek, don't look away." I jumped back into the truck and slammed the door shut, locked it, heart hammering in my throat. My phone screen wouldn't turn on, just black. No power. Nothing. The CB, still unplugged, kept whispering, "Don't let it get close. Keep the lights off." I hesitated, hand hovering over the headlights. Then I killed them, and for the first time in my life, I sat in pitch-black silence on the side of an empty highway in a dead truck, holding my breath while something moved outside. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15. Then, tap, 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 right behind me. Not on the window. On the sleeper wall, like knuckles brushing the aluminum paneling from the inside. I didn't look. I just turned the key. Somehow, the engine caught. Dashboard lit up. CB stayed dead. I floored it. Tires squealed. Didn't stop until I hit Asheville. Pulled into a Flying J with bright floodlights and a dozen other rigs around. Checked the sleeper. No one there. No sign of anything. Except, on the inside of the back panel, there were 3 long streaks across the metal. Not scratches. Smears. Like something had pressed against it with wet, greasy hands. I've replaced the CB since. Got a new rig, too. Different route now. But every so often, usually around 2:30, in the morning, I swear I hear a faint crackle over the radio, a whisper I didn't ask for, calling my name, still trying to warn me. And sometimes, I think I should have listened the first time. I've driven through nearly every hollow and pass between eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina. And if there's one thing I've learned in 20 years of running loads through the Appalachians, it's this: respect the mountain. Roads up there aren't just pavement. They've got memory. They've got moods. This happened last March, just past the tail end of winter, when you start getting that freezing fog in the mornings and the black ice likes to hide in the shadows. I was hauling a partial load of farming equipment from Johnson City to a drop yard near Asheville. Light run, easy route, nothing special. I'd taken that stretch of road a dozen times. There's this old tunnel on Route 197. No name, just a short pass that cuts through a chunk of the mountain. Locals call it King Hollow Tunnel, but it's not marked on any signs. It's not even that long, maybe a couple hundred feet. Just a dark 2-lane stretch where the signal always drops, and your radio goes dead. It was around 10:45 p.m., moonless, fog hugging the pavement like a blanket of smoke. I'd just passed Burnsville and was rolling easy about 40, sipping burnt coffee and listening to an AM weather station that kept fading in and out. As I approached the tunnel, my headlights caught the concrete arch, stained dark with moss and soot. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling like a ticking clock. My high beams barely pierced the middle. Then I entered. And halfway through, right as I passed the halfway point, my headlights cut out. Completely. No flicker. No warning. Just total, suffocating black. I slammed the brakes. Instinct more, then thought, and in that instant and in the pitch dark, I saw him. A silhouette. Dead center in the lane ahead. Not a blur. Not a trick of the light. Someone standing there, shoulders hunched, head tilted, like they'd been waiting. And then, just as fast, the lights flicked back on. Empty. No one in the lane. Nothing but my own hood and the wet tunnel wall. I sat there, heart jackhammering in my throat, hand still clenching the wheel so tight I thought it might snap. I scanned the mirrors, checked the road behind me. No movement. No other cars. And that's when I noticed something even stranger. The tunnel? It was longer now. I swear to God, it looked like it had stretched. I could still see the entrance behind me, but the exit ahead, it was gone. just dark tunnel walls stretching forward farther than they should have. I eased back on the gas. The engine hummed low, tires slick against damp concrete. I drove maybe 20 yards, then 30. Still no exit, no curve, no light, just more tunnel. That's when the radio, dead since I'd entered, crackled. At first I thought it was static. Then I heard a voice. Very faint. Grant. That stopped me cold. I don't have my name on the CB, never broadcast it. I go by Clutch Dog on the radio. Always have. I didn't even have the mic in hand. The voice came again, warped, like it was coming through water. Grant, don't stop. My foot hovered over the brake. I shouldn't have, but I stopped. The second I did, the truck shuddered, like something heavy had landed on the trailer. I looked in the mirror, nothing there. Then, a sound. Not outside, inside, scraping, slow, from behind the seat, like nails dragging across metal. I turned. Nothing. I checked the sleeper. Empty. But when I looked forward again, there was a figure in the road, just a few feet in front of the hood. Not moving, and this time the lights didn't go out. I saw them clearly. Pale skin, hollow cheeks, eyes that didn't blink, and a mouth, slowly opening. I didn't breathe. That figure stood motionless, not twitching, not blinking, not swaying like a person would when standing still. Just frozen, like a mannequin placed dead center in my path. The skin looked too smooth, like stretched wax. The eyes were sunk so deep they almost disappeared into shadow, but it was the mouth that got me. It was still opening. Not wide, just slow, like it was about to say something. But no sound came. I don't know how long I stared. Probably a second. Felt like hours. Then, without thinking, I slammed the gear into reverse and gunned it. The engine roared and the trailer rattled like hell. Tires screeching as I backed out fast. Headlights bouncing against the tunnel walls like lightning in a bottle. The figure didn't move. Not 1 inch. I kept backing out until finally, I saw the pale gray light of the tunnel entrance appear behind me. I burst out into the night, tires spitting gravel as I veered off the side and killed the engine. For the first time in my life, I got out and walked away from my rig. I stood on the side of the road, panting like I'd just outrun death. The night air was freezing, and my hands were shaking so hard I dropped my keys. I stared at the tunnel. It looked normal again. Just the same short, mossy stretch of concrete I'd passed through dozens of times. No sign of anyone. No voice on the wind. Just silence. Eventually, I drove around. Took an extra hour, but I didn't care. I wasn't going back through there. When I got to the drop yard, I told dispatch I hit black ice and had to reroute. I didn't mention the figure, or the voice, or how the tunnel stretched like a living thing. But here's the part that still gets me. 2 days later, I was talking to an old-timer at a truck stop in Bryson City, one of those guys who knows every road and ghost story in the region. I told him, vaguely, about the tunnel on 197. Just said my lights cut out and I thought I saw someone. He went quiet for a long time, then said, "King Hollow? You're lucky. Some folks see that figure and don't come out the other side." Asked what it was, he just said, "Whatever's in that tunnel ain't alive, and it don't want to be alone." I don't drive that route anymore, but every now and then, I'll pass a tunnel in the distance, and I swear I feel something watching, waiting, for headlights to flicker out just long enough to let it in. There's this unspoken rule among truckers. You don't stop unless you absolutely have to when you're running through the Blue Ridge at night. Not because of crime or anything like that. It's the quiet. That deep, echoing silence that creeps up around mile marker 266, near where the old coal towns fade into woods so thick even the moon can't get through. It's peaceful, yeah, but it also feels watched. It was late March when this happened. Cold, but not freezing, with wind that never let up and fog that hung low like a blanket of milk. I'd left Beckley around 9 p.m., heading south toward Boone. Load was light, the schedule was loose, and I figured I'd take the scenic route, which meant cutting through those forgotten back highways, the kind that don't show up properly on GPS. About 1:30 in the morning, my eyes started to blur. You know that gritty, sandpaper feeling behind your eyelids when your body's begging for rest? Yeah, I had that. Bad. So I decided to pull over for a bit. Just a 15-minute nap on a stretch of road near an old ridge overlook. No houses, no cars, no phone service, just a crumbling shoulder with cracked pavement and weeds growing through. But as I slowed to a stop and angled the cab near the edge, something caught my eye in the dark. Just 20 or 30 feet ahead of me, nestled, at the base of a split cedar tree, was a roadside memorial. I've seen plenty of those in my time. Wooden crosses, stuffed animals, flowers wrapped in plastic, faded photos bleached by the sun. Always sad, always human. But this one felt different. There were candles. Not the little votive ones you find in dollar stores. These were thick, red wax-dripping candles stuck into the ground in a perfect triangle, and they were burning. Steady, bright flames, which would have been fine, except the wind was howling. You could feel it rocking the cab gently like a slow push. Yet the flames didn't move. Not a flicker. I rolled down my window a crack, just enough to let in the cold and hear the wind better. It was cutting through the trees like it had teeth, the kind of gusts that rattle signs and strip branches. But those candles? Still. Perfect. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed out of the truck, boots crunching gravel and brittle grass. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I got closer and exhaled, a plume of steam in the frigid air. The memorial was simple. 3 candles, a small wooden cross, hand-carved, no name, no photo, no flowers, just a single note, nailed into the bark of the cedar behind it. Stay awake. That was it. Nothing else. Just those 2 words burned into the wood like someone had taken a soldering iron and pressed slow, deliberate letters. A chill ran through me, and not from the wind. I backed up, flashlight beam shaking slightly as I returned to the truck. I wasn't tired anymore. That gritty eyelid feeling was long gone. But when I got back inside and shut the door, I realized something else. The wind? It had stopped. Completely. No movement. Outside, not in the trees, not across the hood, not even the sound of it, and then the smell. Like wax and burnt hair. Faint, but enough to make me glance toward the passenger seat, heart thudding. Nothing there. But when I looked back toward the memorial, just out my windshield, I froze. There was someone kneeling at the candles now. A figure, thin, shoulders hunched, face hidden in shadow. Just sitting there, like they'd always been there. But they hadn't. They weren't there a minute ago. And worse, the flames were still burning, perfectly still, even as the figure slowly turned its head toward me. I didn't move. The figure didn't either. Not at first, just crouched at the base of that cedar, half shrouded by shadows, like something left behind by the wind. The candles burned between us, casting an amber glow across its silhouette, but never touching its face. And then, it twitched, not like a normal person shifting or standing. It jerked like a puppet yanked by a wire, its head tilted just a little more, toward me. Not the truck, me. I felt it. Not just like I was being watched, more like I was being recognized. My instinct was to throw the truck in reverse and get the hell out of there. But before I could even reach for the gear, the headlights shut off. The dash went black, radio dead, interior lights gone. And outside, the world swallowed itself. No candles, no road, no figure, just pitch dark. I swear the silence had a weight to it, like sound had been vacuumed out of the air. Even my own breathing felt muted, like it didn't belong. Then something moved, behind the truck. I didn't see it. I felt it. Gravel shifting, The slightest tug on the back of the cab, like someone gripping it with both hands. I turned slowly, hands trembling, trying to peek out the rear window. Condensation coated the glass, but there were 3 long streaks running down the center, like fingers. I flicked the ignition. Nothing. No crank. Just a soft clicking noise, steady and slow. Click, click, click. Then, from somewhere just outside the driver's door, a voice, barely audible, dry, croaking. Stay, awake. I slammed my fist against the wheel, prayed, cursed, willed the engine to life. On the 4th try, it turned. Lights flared on, radio blared static, and the figure? Gone. The candles were burned down to nothing, just puddles of wax. The note on the tree? Torn in half. I didn't check the back of the truck, I didn't care, I drove. Didn't stop until the sky turned gray and the road curved back into cell range. I pulled over at a diner outside Boone and sat in the lot for an hour before going in. Didn't sleep for 2 nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flickerless flame, that twisting shape, those streaks on the glass, but the part that still won't leave me, the reason I can't forget, is what I saw the next day. I looked up roadside memorials in that area, just to see. Just to prove to myself it was real. I found one, an old article. Car crash, single driver, late-night accident off Route 207 near a cedar tree. The name, Tyler DeWitt. My name, exact spelling, same age, died 2 years ago, to the day, and the article ended with a strange detail. Police said the crash site had 3 candles, still burning even in the wind. I've spent most of my life in western North Carolina, born and raised in Avery County. Folks up here grow up learning how to handle snow the way city people learn traffic lights. You learn the sounds your truck makes when it doesn't want to grip, how to read the tree line for windbreaks, and how to trust your gut when something on the mountain feels off. This happened last winter, early February. A storm had rolled in heavy the night before, dropping nearly a foot of powder over the higher elevations. The kind of snow that muffles everything and makes you feel like you're the last person alive. I was heading up to my cousin Wade's hunting cabin near Beach Mountain. He'd texted me that morning asking if I could check on the place. Said the wind had taken out part of the roof during the storm, and he was stuck out in Raleigh. Cabin didn't have cell service, but the propane heater was still running, and he didn't want a fire hazard or a busted pipe. I loaded up my Tacoma around noon, threw chains on the tires, and packed a shovel, lantern, thermal gloves, all the usual stuff. It's about a 90-minute drive from my place in Banner Elk, mostly switchbacks and forest roads, especially once you get past the plowed parts. The snow was still coming down, light but steady. By the time I hit the old fire road leading up, the mountain visibility had dropped to maybe 20-30 feet in front of me. The trees were bowed under the weight, and the road looked untouched. No tire tracks, no footprints, not even rabbit prints. But about halfway up, something changed. I hit a curve and spotted fresh tire tracks in the snow. Single set, still sharp, not yet filled in by wind or flakes. Looked like maybe a Jeep or an old Blazer. Narrow tires, deep tread. At first I figured it was another local, headed up to their own place. Happens. Only thing was, there were no intersecting roads, just one route, and those tracks hadn't come from behind me, they just appeared. I followed them for maybe 2 miles, twisting through the narrow ridge road up where the trees thin out and the wind cuts harder. I kept thinking I'd see the vehicle ahead, maybe parked in a turnout or stuck in a drift, but I didn't. And then the tracks started doing something strange. They weren't weaving or adjusting. They were too straight. Like the driver hadn't touched the wheel once, just dead center in the lane, no skid marks, no hesitation, and they didn't stop. Not even at the final turn, where the road ends at the overlook. That spot is well known. Locals call it Shivers Edge. It's a narrow gravel clearing where the fire road stops dead at a cliff that drops nearly 200 feet into the valley. No guardrail, just snow, sky, and open air. And that's exactly where the tire tracks led, right to the edge. I pulled up slow, heart already starting to beat in my throat. I stopped maybe 10 yards back and got out, boots crunching softly in the snow. The wind was howling up there, sharp and constant. I pulled my scarf tighter and walked forward. The tracks led straight to the cliff, and then nothing. No churned snow, no signs of braking, no vehicle marks in the trees below. I even walked to the edge and looked down, half expecting to see a busted taillight or a bumper caught on a branch. There was nothing. And just as strange, there were no tracks coming back. Like whoever drove up there just vanished. I stood there for a minute, trying to logic it out. Maybe they reversed all the way down. But that didn't explain the direction of the tread. They'd come up, not backed in. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach knot. In the center of the tire tracks, near the cliff edge, were footprints. Just two. Side by side. Facing the drop. Like someone had gotten out and just stood there. No pacing. No panic. No turning back. Just 2 feet in the snow, toes pointing toward the void. And next to them, partly buried in the drift, was something red. A glove. Children's size. I bent down to pick it up. And then I heard a sound that didn't belong to the wind. Crunch, crunch behind me. Footsteps. I stood up fast, heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My breath fogged the air in front of me as I turned, slowly scanning the tree line. Crunch, crunch. Then silence. There was nothing there. No person, no animal, no movement. Just trees swaying in the wind, and that heavy, eerie silence that snow brings. The kind that makes you feel like you're standing in a soundproof box. I called out, "Hello?" My voice cracked in the cold. No answer. I took a step back toward the truck, that little red glove still clenched in my hand. Then I paused and glanced down. There were no new tracks. The snow around me was untouched. Still smooth, except for the ones I'd made getting out of the truck. But I heard footsteps right behind me, and then a whisper, not carried by the wind. It came from next to me, soft, female, help. I dropped the glove, spun around again, and saw something I'll never forget. Out beyond the cliff edge, standing maybe 10 feet in the air, over open air, was a figure. It was a woman. But wrong. Her clothes didn't move in the wind. Her hair hung down flat even though the gusts were slicing past us, and her feet weren't touching anything. She just hovered there, facing me. Eyes dark, mouth barely parted, and then just like that she was gone. No sound, no motion, just vanished. I bolted, jumped back into the truck, threw it in reverse and peeled out, snow kicking up behind me. Didn't stop till I hit dry asphalt again. Didn't stop shaking till well after dark. I never told Wade about what I saw. Just told him the cabin was fine and left it at that. But the next morning I couldn't shake it, so I looked up old reports from that stretch of road. Turns out 5 years ago, during another winter storm, a family went missing driving up that same mountain. A man, his wife, and their daughter. They found the husband's body in a ravine 2 miles below. The mother and child? Never recovered. Some say the vehicle must have slid off the road and sunk into the woods where it was never found. But I'm telling you, no car ever went off that cliff, because the snow never lies in those tracks. They ended at the edge, just like she did. Most folks who don't drive long distances at night think the road is dead after dark. Just empty lanes, sleepy towns, headlights slicing through the black. But anyone who's done enough miles knows better. The road's alive at night. It listens. It hides things. I'd been on the road for nearly 6 hours when it happened. I was heading east on Highway 421 through a stretch of North Carolina that doesn't get much traffic, mostly 2-lane curves through forest, nothing but pitch on either side. It was past 2 a.m., and I was maybe 40 minutes from my motel in Sanford. The only reason I hadn't stopped sooner was because I like finishing what I start, even if it's late. I had some country station playing low, heater humming, and a fresh cup of gas station coffee steaming in the cup holder. I was tired, sure, but not nodding off tired. Just zoned in. It was around mile marker 126, right after a tight downhill curve, that I saw the blinking lights. Hazards, a car up ahead on the shoulder, maybe 40, 50 yards out. At first I thought it had slid off, maybe a flat or engine trouble. I instinctively eased off the gas and hit the signal, even though there was no one behind me. I always stop if I see someone stranded. It's just the right thing to do out here. You never know how long someone's been waiting. As I slowed to a crawl, I could make out more of the car, small sedan, dark-colored. The hazard lights were blinking steady, red-orange strobes flashing against the trees. No movement inside. Pulled up maybe 20 feet behind it and threw on my own hazards. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box, cracked the door open, and stepped out into the cold. That's when the hazard lights shut off. Abrupt. Like someone had flicked a switch. I blinked, confused, walked a few steps forward. The car was gone. I swear on everything I own. It was gone. No brake lights, no sound of a door slamming, no tail lights fading in the distance. Just empty shoulder and 2 fresh tire tracks in the gravel where it had just been. I whipped the flashlight around, heart starting to race. Scanned the ditch, the woods. Maybe it had pulled off suddenly, but there was no road there, just trees and soft shoulder. The kind you'd get stuck in, not disappear through. And those tire tracks? They stopped, right at the gravel's edge. No return path, no turnaround. Like the car had vanished forward into thin air. I climbed back into my truck and locked the doors, shaking a little now. I kept looking in the rear view, waiting for those blinking lights to show back up behind me. They didn't. But about 10 minutes later, I passed another curve. And for a split second, just before my lights caught the sign for an upcoming turn, I saw the same blinking hazards, up ahead, same distance, same angle, same car. My blood went cold. I didn't slow down this time. I passed it going 55, eyes locked on the road, but as I went by, there was nothing there, just more blacktop and shoulder. No car, no blinking lights, no fresh tracks. It was like the road was playing with me. By the time I hit the gas station outside of town, I was sweating through my flannel. I pulled up under the pumps, stepped out under the harsh, white glow and tried to catch my breath. And that's when I noticed it. On the rear bumper of my truck was a handprint, not dirt, not grime. A clear print in the condensation. Long fingers, spread wide. I hadn't stopped for anyone. No one had touched my truck, and yet someone, something, had been right behind me. I stared at that handprint longer than I should have. It wasn't mine. I wear gloves when I drive in the cold, and besides, the fingers were too long, the spacing too wide. It looked off, almost like it had too many joints. The kind of thing your eyes don't want to admit is real. I wiped it off with the edge of my sleeve, and even though I really didn't want to touch it, and went inside the gas station, bought another coffee just to do something normal, to prove to myself I was still in the real world. The cashier didn't say a word, just looked half asleep behind thick glasses. I thought about asking him if anyone else had come through. Maybe someone who'd been driving a black sedan. But I didn't. Didn't want to sound crazy. Didn't want to be crazy. The rest of the drive to the motel was uneventful. No more blinking lights, no more vanishing cars. But the next morning, when I came out to check on my truck just to prove everything had been in my head, I saw something that stopped me cold. On the inside of the driver's side window was another handprint, same shape, same size. Only this one had smeared downward, like something had pressed its hand there while I drove, watching the road go by. I didn't even bother brushing it off. I left early, got home before sundown, told myself I was done with night driving for a while. But a few nights later, I was lying in bed, scrolling through local news like I always do before sleep. I came across a headline from back in 1997. 3 dead in late-night crash on curve outside Sanford. Bystanders drove by for hours before realizing vehicle was gone. The The car in the photo? Black sedan. Hazards still blinking. And the last sentence of the article? The car was found off the shoulder down an embankment, but no skid marks, no damage to the trees, and no sign anyone had tried to stop. They say the driver was trying to flag down help, but no one ever saw her. Until maybe they did, and they didn't realize it was already too late. This happened about 5 years ago, just outside of Parkersburg, West Virginia. I was running late on a delivery route that should have ended before sunset, but a blown trailer tire back in Columbus put me behind. It was close to 2 a.m. when I finally crossed into the hills with snow spitting sideways and the temperature hovering around 19 degrees. That stretch of Route 50 at night, lonely as hell. You might pass a house every 10 miles if you're lucky, and the whole thing's lined with dense woods and deep ditches. My cab was warm, heater blowing steady, and I had an old 90s playlist keeping me company, trying to stay alert for deer or black ice. About 10 miles outside Ellenboro, I spotted something up ahead. Just a dark blotch on the right shoulder, maybe 30 or 40 yards out, caught in the edge of my high beams. At first I figured it was a downed tree limb or some junk someone dumped off the back of a truck. But as I got closer, I realized it was a person, a tall, thin figure walking along the snowy shoulder, barefoot. They were wearing what looked like a hospital gown or some kind of thin dress, white or gray, clinging to their body from the damp air. No shoes, no coat, no hat. And it was freezing. The kind of cold where your nose hairs freeze and your boots crunch like brittle glass. I slowed down immediately, flicked my hazards on, and eased to the left side of the road so I wouldn't scare them or hit a patch of ice. My first thought was mental health crisis. Maybe someone wandered off from a facility. Second thought, drugged out. But either way, I figured I'd stop and call for help, maybe give them a blanket or at least keep them from walking right into traffic. But as I passed, they didn't turn to look, didn't flinch, didn't even shiver. Their arms just hung limp at their sides. The skin looked pale, blotchy, like freezer-burned meat. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw only the road behind me. No one walking, no one there. I blinked, leaned forward, looked again. I even checked the side mirror. Both of them, still nothing. The highway behind me was empty, just snow and fog and dark pavement. I tapped the brakes and came to a slow stop about 100 yards ahead, grabbed my flashlight, cracked the door open and stepped out into the wind. It hit me like a gut punch, dry and sharp with that distinct metallic scent snow gives off when it's about to really let loose. I walked back toward where I saw the figure. Nothing. No footprints in the shoulder snow. No dragging marks, no sign anyone had ever walked there. I turned in a slow circle, flashlight cutting across empty woods and frozen branches. It was like whatever I'd seen had never existed. I headed back to the truck, trying to shake it off. Maybe I was just overtired. Road hallucinations are a real thing, shadows and snow playing tricks on your mind. But when I climbed back into the cab and shut the door, something felt wrong. My rear-view mirror had fogged over. Not the windshield, not the side mirrors, just the rear view, like someone had been breathing on it from inside. I reached up to wipe it clean and froze. There was a word scrawled into the fog. Cold, just one word, written with a finger, slanted, shaky. I didn't move for a full minute, didn't breathe, didn't blink, just stared. Because the worst part wasn't the word, it was the faint wet streaks leading down the mirror, like tears. I stared at that mirror like it was about to speak, then I wiped it clean with my sleeve. Hard, like erasing it would undo whatever just happened. But my hands were shaking. I checked the locks. All 4 doors, click, 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 still sealed tight. The cab was warm, the windows clear, and nothing looked out of place. No footprints on the dash, no condensation on the glass. But the air felt wrong now. Heavy, like the moment right before a thunderclap. Turned the key, engine started fine. Headlights on, no glitches. Nothing to tell me what I'd just seen wasn't just exhaustion or a trick of the weather. Except The rearview mirror stayed fogged. Only the center this time. A perfect oval, like someone was still sitting in the back seat breathing out slowly. I didn't look back, I couldn't. I just put it in gear and drove. Faster than I should have, probably. But I needed to get off that road. Needed streetlights, people, anything that felt normal. About 10 miles later, I pulled into a Sheetz off the highway, bright, busy, humming with life. I parked under the canopy and finally looked into the mirror. Again, clear. No fog, no words, just my own tired reflection staring back. I got out and went inside, splashed cold water on my face, and bought a coffee I didn't even want. Just needed something hot in my hands to ground me. When I came back out, there were wet footprints on the pavement behind my truck, bare, small, like someone had been standing there, watching. They only lasted a few steps before fading into the slush, but they were real. Too small to be mine. Too recent to be old. I don't know what I saw on that road, don't know if it needed help, or if I was supposed to be next, but I've changed my route since then. Won't drive through Ritchie County at night, won't stop for anyone walking barefoot, and I always check the mirror, because every once in a while it fogs up again, and when it does, that same word appears, cold.